A boy creates an app to go on fake dates with random girls, but his plan gets complicated when he falls in love with two girls at the same time. Welcome to the Quick Movie Recaps. Today, we'll show you a movie from 2019 titled The Perfect Date. Spoilers ahead. Watch out and subscribe. The movie starts with a guy named Brooks Rattigan. Brooks has big dreams and his inspirations are Bill Gates, Musk, and as well his dad, who once was a very famous writer and now he's not. Brooks has best friend, Murph, who always supported Brooks in everything he does. They develop apps and work together at Subway. The school counselor tells Brooks that he has to give his best shot for the college essay if he wants to get into a prestigious university like Yale. Brooks agrees with her and walks out of school. When he comes, he sees a brand new car of latest model that belongs to his fellow. Brooks wants to be rich and successful like his rich classmates and he envies them a lot. Later, he goes to work and meets Murph there. He asks Murph to give ideas for his college essay, and Murph tells him to write about his mom leaving him when he was just a kid. The memory hurts Brooks, but he brushes it off quickly. Just then, some of his classmates come there. One of them, named Reese, talks about how he doesn't want to go with his cousin to a dance and wants to spend the night with his girlfriend instead. He goes on to say that his cousin's dad is even paying him to take her. Brooks hears about this and offers to take the girl instead, which makes Reese shocked. Brooks tells him he will need to borrow Reese's car and must also get paid for taking the girl. Reese agrees and gives him his car. Brooks is over the moon to drive such an expensive car. He says to Murph that it is just a way to earn some money. Even though Murph doesn't think it is a good idea, Brooks is determined to do it. Brooks goes to the girl's house and he is welcomed by a man who seems to be very rich and intellectual. Then he introduces Brooks to a woman who comes down, telling her husband that their daughter isn't not wearing heels but instead opting for some boots. Brooks is confused by all this mess, but then he finally gets to see a girl wearing boots coming downstairs. He tries to introduce himself, but she jokes with him and they go to the car soon. Her name is Celia, and she's a very headstrong and outspoken girl. As they ride the car, Celia tells him to drop her off at a bookstore cafe and come pick her up after a couple hours, but Brooks is confused and insists Celia go to her dance and doesn't budge. Celia scoffs and agrees. They finally reach the party. Brooks drags her to the dance floor and they start dancing. They enjoy for a while, until a slow romantic long song starts playing. Celia gets way too awkward, but Brooks pulls her in and they dance. Just then, he looks at a pretty girl and can't help but stare at her. He slightly injures Celia in the process and they stop dancing. Brooks apologizes for his mistake and gets her an ice pack immediately. Then that pretty girl from before comes to check on Celia. Her name is Shelby and invites them to a party. Brooks really wants to go, but Celia says no. Brooks starts liking Shelby and bids her goodbye. He goes on to drop Celia home. Celia jokes about how he should start a business of being the rich girl's boyfriend for a night. Brooks takes it seriously and thinks of an idea. Brooks and Celia start getting along. As she is walking, Brooks realizes Celia was never injured and was faking it to get home soon. He tells her how he wanted to go to Shelby's party but couldn't. Celia tells him he wouldn't belong there because the party is for snobby, posh kids. She walks into her house irritated. Celia's dad pays Brooks and even gives him a bonus for lasting so long with his daughter. Reese soon comes to pick up his car. Brooks asks him how he afforded such an expensive car. Reese then tells him that he hustled to get it. Brooks decides to hustle and get what he wants. The next day, he tries to convince Murph into making an app for him. At first, Murph doesn't like the idea of making an app for hiring a boyfriend. But somehow convinces Murph and he agrees, thinking it would just help the both of them. The day goes by and at night, Brooks waits impatiently as Murph handles the code. He finally builds an app which can allow a person to choose what kind of date she wants. It's like takeout but for a person for one day. Brooks is excited to see it. But Brooks makes it clear that he wouldn't be intimate with anyway and just act like a chaperone. Brooks stalks Shelby and starts to like her even more. Then he starts to write his college essay and gets a request on the app. He goes to an art show as a nerd to meet his first client. The app skyrockets and Brooks starts to get countless requests. He helps girls with dating advice, and goes to tennis practice, parties, dance practices and pretty much everything. His phone continues to blow up with requests. He starts to earn a lot of money. One day, Celia calls Brooks and apologizes for her behavior. She also asks him to help her make her crush jealous. She adds that she wants him to go to Shelby's house party with her, and Brooks of course says yes. She explains the whole plan to him. That night, they go to Shelby's party. They enter the party and Shelby greets them. Brooks tries to tell Shelby where he lives, but Celia lies that he is a very rich guy who lives in a wealthy neighborhood. Shelby sees her dad flirting with some of her friends and quickly goes there when Brooks asks Celia why she lied. Celia tells him that if he's trying to impress Shelby, he has to do that. At that moment, they see Celia's crush, Franklin. Celia tries to run away, but Brooks drags her. He initiates a conversation with Franklin. Celia and Franklin soon start talking and Brooks leaves. Shelby starts talking to Brooks. Shelby is fully convinced that Brooks is very rich and he doesn't deny it. He gets back to Celia with ice cream and she excitedly tells him that she and Franklin are going on a date. Brooks is happy and the two plan to have a fake public breakup at another party, so Celia can date Franklin and Brooks gets a chance with Shelby. Then Brooks tells Celia that he likes Shelby and wants to go to Yale. Celia says that he's only running after external happiness instead of accepting himself for how and who he is. Celia tells him that her dad knows the president of Yale and would speak to him for Brooks, which makes Brooks really happy. Next day at work, Murph seems to be a little distressed, and when Brooks asks him about it, he replies that they're very distant now and Brooks speaks less to him these days. Brooks realizes his mistake and promises Murph to spend more time with him. The next day, Brooks goes to a rich girl's house pretending to be a douche. Celia calls him, so he goes to the washroom to attend to the call. Celia tells him that she has set up a meeting for him with the dean of Yale. Brooks gets super excited to hear the news. Next day, Celia meets Brooks and urges him to not fake it to get an admission. He is really nervous, and Celia tries her best to support him. Then Brooks meets the dean. He has done research on the dean, and when the dean asks Brooks to talk about himself, he talks about all the things the dean personally loves, which catches the dean's attention. The dean is very impressed by Brooks, but Celia overhears their conversation. When she asks about it, Brooks tells her that he lied and she becomes furious. She calls him out, but Brooks calls Celia a hypocrite as she's trying to be fake for Franklin. Celia storms out angrily. There's an awkward silence in the car. But then Celia accepts that she's faking it because she's scared to show her true self. Brooks consoles her and tells her that she is confident and that's all that matters. Later, Brooks, Celia and Murph have lunch together at a restaurant. When Brooks goes away to pay, Murph tells Celia about how Brooke was left by his mother and now she is married to a rich pediatrician with a happy family. She doesn't care about Brooks, which hurts him from the inside but doesn't show it. Celia gets sad to hear about this. After dinner, Celia plans to go out with Franklin while Murph and Brooks had other plans. But Brooks gets a request and he decides to take that. Murph gets hurt by this, but he also understands Brooks' desperation to go to Yale. Brooks goes on this fake date and Celia meets Franklin. Franklin keeps talking about coffee and music. Celia is a little uninterested but continues listening. Franklin tells her that Celia and Brooks are very similar. But Celia brushes it off and tells him that they're breaking up soon. Franklin finally lets out the fact that he's a vandal and paints images on walls at night, which immediately weirds her out. The next day, Brooks tells Murph about his fake date, but he doesn't listen. He tells Brooks that he has a loan last night because Brooks didn't keep his promise and walks away. Brooks does feel, but he doesn't really care. Later, Brooks calls Celia to talk about their fake breakup plan, but Celia doesn't want it to happen. She has started liking Brooks. At night, Celia wears makeup and gets dolled up with the help of her mother to impress Brooks. But when she comes and sits in the car, he doesn't even look at her. He is busy planning how to break up. When he finally glances at Celia, he compliments her. But he starts explaining the whole plan to her once again. When they reach the party, Brooke and Celia start to act up, but Brooks somehow starts to make really insensitive comments about Celia. Celia gets hurt and tries to stop him, but when he doesn't, she slaps him and walks away. Brooks comes out of the party and is followed by Shelby. She consoles him and then they make out. She asks him out for her formal dance and Brooks instantly agrees. Next day, when he comes to tell Murph about this at work, he is shocked to find that someone else is working instead of Murph. It turns out that Murph was really hurt and he switched his shifts. Brooks is confused but thinks that he will work this out. He receives a request to go on a walk with an old lady. She tells him how she used to go on walks with her husband all the time, but after he passed away, she feels lonely. Then she tells him how you know when you've found the right one. She adds that the one you're most comfortable with and love being around is the one you're meant to be with. Brooks realizes this and texts Celia, but she ignores him after what he's done. Celia is done with Franklin too and decides to go to the formal dance alone. At the night, Brooks picks up Shelby and they go to an expensive restaurant. Shelby talks about her plans and Brooks realizes that they're two completely different people. They can't even have a conversation properly. They go to the formal dance and Celia is there too. Shelby insults her but Brooks is mesmerized by Celia. Just then, Brooks meets a girl who he helped with his dating advice. She talks about his app and Shelby confronts him. When Brooks confesses about how he's poor and has the app to help him get to Yale, Shelby is disappointed and walks away but Brooks isn't sad. He realizes his mistakes and goes to Celia. Both of them talk about their crushes and how they weren't really their type. Celia confesses that she likes Brooks but he isn't her backup. Brooks understands and goes back home disappointed. His dad asks what's wrong and he tells him everything. He tells that he doesn't even know who he actually is. His dad gives him some great advice. Brooks figures out what he actually should be doing. He declines the request that comes. The next day, Brooks meets Murph and saves his friendship. Brooks is really happy with it. He starts on his essay once again. He calls Celia to meet up at a cafe. He tells her that he didn't apply to Yale and accepted UConn's offer since he doesn't want to fake it anymore. He gives her a letter expressing his feelings. He tells her how he's only himself when he's with her. He asks her out in the letter and goes home to give her time to think. Brooks's dad also gets a great gig. Just then, he gets a request in his app and he quickly declines. But he continues getting them. He realizes what's going on and opens the door to see Celia standing there. She apologizes for slapping him. Then she asks him to go to another formal dance. Brooks finally agrees and Celia takes him to his workplace. Brooks is stunned to see Murph. Murph tells him that he's going to UConn too. Celia and Brooks share their feelings for each other and couldn't be happier. Then they kiss and spend the night together, starting a new chapter of their life. If you want to watch more movie recaps like this one, consider subscribing to the channel. See you in the next video.